When we talk about power moves in business, we often forget the ones being made behind the scenes, where strategy meets service and impact meets income. Today's conversation flips the narrative on what it really means to be a boss in purpose driven industries. This episode is not just for entrepreneurs, it's for change agents ready to play the long game. We're diving deep into the business of social impact, brand legacy, and building systems that serve both your mission and your money. If you've been looking for the blueprint to scale with heart and hustle, this is your moment. Joining us today is Dr. Tywanna Smith, a powerhouse strategist whose background spans professional sports, international consulting, and purpose driven business development. She's a former WNBA athlete turned business and brand builder, bringing her unique lens to the intersection of sports, leadership, and legacy. As the founder of the Athletes Nexus and a globally respected speaker and consultant, Dr. Smith champions sustainability and strategy for individuals and organizations alike. Her story is proof that reinvention isn't just possible, it's profitable. Being on Impactors Out Loud means stepping into a space where conversations actually move the needle. It's not just visibility, it's alignment with a platform that values action, legacy, and results. Guests like Dr. Smith aren't just interviewed, they're amplified, connected, and celebrated within a network of high impact leaders ready to collaborate and co create change. This is where purpose meets platform.
Welcome to Impctrs Out Loud. I'm your host, Tracy B. Allen. Impctrs Out Loud is where social impact meets strategy, spotlighting trailblazing entrepreneurs, their challenges, and the revolutionary innovations driving real change. Each week, we dive into powerful stories, strategies, and insight to inspire and equip those passionate about making an impact through business.
Hey everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Impactors Out Loud. Today I have with me Dr. Tywanna Smith, and she is an athletic director and knows all about sports. And you know, guys, because this is my fourth interview about sports, I'm sports illiterate, but I'm learning. As I'm going along with these interviews, I am learning. And today I'm going to be learning some more, and so are you. So, Dr. Tywanna, welcome to Impactors Out Loud. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your cocktail? How did you get here?
Yes, I am. First of all, thank you so much for having me on
You're welcome.
your podcast. But yes, I am an international sports advisor.
Mhm.
I'm a best-selling author. I'm a professor. I teach at the University of Memphis. And I'm a speaker. And I'd like to think that I got into this space. I've been in the business 18 years, a little over 18 years, managing athletes. And it's taking me into all of these other crossroads where I'm able to teach aspiring professional and elite athletes how to manage the business side of the game. And so I've had the honor of working with over 60 pros who played in the NBA, the NFL, WNBA, Major League Baseball, and many of my clients have also found themselves abroad. I'd say this started as a little girl entering into sports. I had an older cousin, and I guess this is my cocktail, right? So my cocktail started when I was little, when I had a cousin in the NBA, and I had the opportunity to travel around and to really get a glimpse of all of the things that happen behind the scenes for these elite athletes, right? The agents, the financial advisors, the community engagement, and it really intrigued me. And my cousin became my mentor. Coincidentally, I played basketball. You can't tell on the podcast, but I stand about 6'1", and yes.
Oh, wow. You don't look it sitting down.
No, 6'1" with heels, so that's even taller. But But I played collegiate basketball at Ole Miss. I earned my MBA there, and then I went abroad to play professionally myself for 2 years in Europe. Spent a year in Holland, and I spent a year in Spain, and it was such a great experience. From there, I was offered the opportunity to become a financial advisor with Merrill Lynch, and such an amazing experience. My mentor, who actually recently passed within the last 10 days, he really took me under his wing. And I said, you know what? I want to stay connected to sports. And
Mhm.
so I began to manage the finances of professional athletes, with my cousin being my first client. So it's really cool.
Okay.
And it sort of evolved from there to
Mhm.
where I began to take on additional responsibilities outside of finances because they have a lot of needs. And
Mhm.
so community engagement being one of them, crisis management in the media, just general business management. And so I evolved my practice to involve all of those services that I'm able to offer my clients.
Mhm.
Leading into COVID, I began to notice that the players had a ton of learning and developmental gaps, right? They had all this money, but there were so many things that they did not know. And so I began to build the educational arm of my practice through my
Mhm.
books. I do have a best-selling book entitled Surviving the Lights. I began to build programming for collegiate and high school athletes, and I began to
Mhm.
host workshops all around the country. I've even produced an international sport documentary that's won awards to showcase the lives of American athletes who play abroad. Most recently, last year, launched a business conference at UNLV with the NBA, and it was an amazing experience because we want to create a resource for players who don't have the support that they need when they're playing abroad. So it's been a very enriching journey thus far.
That's quite the
That's quite the
resume.
Yes. Little bit
Yeah.
of everything.
Yes. Some things that you talked about that really sticks out to me. I had a family member who did play basketball abroad as well. And he had mixed feelings about it. He said it was a great experience and a bad experience all at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't even think he finished his entire term with them. I think he spent like two
Hard.
years,
It's
and
hard.
he was like, no, I can't stay, and he came back. But you talked about developing the educational arm of your business because of the learning and, I guess, life skills gaps that you
Yeah.
saw within the athletes. Can you expound upon that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So and it's crazy because when I started this back 2017, 2018, writing books and trying to get them into the hands of younger athletes, right?
Mhm.
Collegiate, high school, NIL in those coming years
Right.
began to become, a hot topic. And so as they're able to earn even more revenue in
Mhm.
college, right? So everybody's not going to go
Right.
pro. We know that. And so now we have
Mhm.
just really opened the field to an entirely, new demographic of athletes who have earning potential right now,
Mhm.
but there becomes this additional pressure, right? How do I handle all of this? The juggling these things, the financial skills,
Mhm.
and so I think it was really timely to delve into that aspect. I know they say the kids don't read, but we cannot stop encouraging them to read. And so
Yeah.
I began to, make the book a part of my services. You're bringing me in to speak, buy my book for your athletes.
Mhm.
And I got a ton of reviews. And from there, I moved into some of the more programmatic things. In COVID, I did return to school to earn my doctorate. And so it was very timely to learn about instructional design and all these things. So
Yeah.
I'm able to devise these very engaging workshops to
Mhm.
teach them how identity, right? Who
Right.
are you when you're not playing? And you hear a lot of people talking about that, the slogan, I'm more than an athlete. But what does that really mean? And how do you help an athlete figure out who they are and
Mhm.
their true purpose beyond sports?
So
And
basically, their personal branding
for sure, for sure. And
beyond
they
beyond the court, what or field.
beyond the court, right? And
Yeah.
so the NIL conversation made that easy. And so all of
Mhm.
these resources that I have in my arsenal that I'm building, um, it aligns perfectly with some of the hot topics because while you are figuring out all these creative ways to earn money, you should also have these life skills to go alongside them and how to manage money build a brand, and prepare yourself for that eventual transition out of sport, because it's going to happen to all of us.
Right. And I love that. Like I said, I'm not a sports person, but I know enough to know you see all the, the news articles, right? To know that mismanagement of funds is a big thing. So it was interesting that you started off in the financial area,
Yeah.
because I think that's one of the biggest things, that you go into a sport where you're making more than probably your entire town,
And that
right?
you'll ever make the rest of your life in most
Exactly.
cases. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you come out on the end broke.
Yeah.
Like, how does that happen? Right. And I'm always wondering. So it was interesting that you said that, because I always wondered, but who are your advisors?
Mm.
Who do
Yeah.
you have in your back pocket that
Yeah.
can say, "Hey, this is how you invest for the future. Here is an allowance. You're not good with money. Let's take 20% and put in a high yield savings account or a money market account, or an annuity or a Roth
Yes.
IRA, whatever it is." Like, how do you come out on the other end not having money? Right? Losing everything that you were able to acquire within the confines of you playing professionally or internationally.
Yeah.
I'm always curious about that.
Yeah, there are a ton of dynamics in play here, but
Mhm.
essentially it boils down to a couple of things, and discipline is one of them. And I'm not just going to say people, the resources you have around you, right? So the very thing that makes it, and this was something when I went through some of my psychology courses in the doctoral program, it was so eye-opening to me, things I knew to be true, but to see the science behind it, right?
Right.
The things that makes us great athletes, our
Mhm.
ability to make split second decisions in play,
Right.
right? Like the
Mhm.
impulsiveness is the very same thing that makes us make very poor decisions with money, right? That impulsiveness, okay?
Right.
So you have to retrain yourself, and the counter
Mhm.
to that is discipline, right? Like having
Mhm.
these processes and plans in place, so that when it's time to utilize them, you don't have to think, you don't have to figure it out. All you got to do is follow the script, your budget, and those things.
Right. Like a
On the
framework.
one hand, for sure, for sure.
Mhm.
On the one hand, you absolutely have individuals that take advantage of the busyness of this life, right?
Mhm.
Because it's noisy.
Mhm.
These young people are extremely busy, right? From sunup to sundown as this
Mhm.
public figure. Collegiate athletes, in addition to professionals, right? You have like I'm literally from sunup to sundown. And with all
Mhm.
of that, you've got people who can take advantage of your inattention, but then you also have those who could possibly be telling you all the right things. And I know because I've been there, right?
Okay.
But because of that busyness, right?
Mhm.
It's very difficult for you to grasp what they're saying and follow their code, because they got a lot of things going on. So when I see those cases in the media, and I've been
Mhm.
behind the scenes cleaning up messes for
Mhm.
my athletes, so I know a lot of those things do actually happen. I do have a little grace for them as young humans who they just don't have the skill set, particularly if you didn't grow up right in this lifestyle and with money,
Right.
because you could have people there telling you the right things, but because you're so overwhelmed, it's very difficult for you to weed that good advice out from all of the other negative and
Right.
not so healthy influences that you have around you.
But how do you break through that barrier?
Yeah. So what I do is I lean into our natural, human tendencies, right?
Mhm.
And so what I typically do, I have this rookie year system where I used to partner with agents. A lot of
Mhm.
people think I'm an agent. I'm like, "No, I'm not negotiating those contracts. I do negotiate endorsements and those things,
Mhm.
but
Yeah,
I
that's what
work
I thought from reading
alongside."
your, from reading
Yeah,
your bio. So that's why I
yeah, you
introduced you
have
the way I did, because that's what I thought. Uh-huh.
Yeah, you have agents and they're in that
Mhm.
business assessing market value, and they have the relationships with the teams to
Right.
negotiate contracts.
Mhm.
I'm the person who works alongside them once their job is done, right?
Okay.
And um, when I'm working with these players, and I would do this rookie year system. So 6 months, right? Your first
Mhm.
season, We have this plan in place. I need to teach you. I need to get you off to a great start. I need to give you some tips and strategies that you can utilize. And so one thing that I do with them, in addition to organizing their finances and having like this automated savings in place, is I teach them how to develop a reward system for themselves, right? And so with this, everybody has a vice, right? These kids come in, some of them like jewelry, some of them,
Cars.
like to travel with their entourage, some of them
Mhm.
like, cars or whatever, right?
Mhm.
And what I try to do is tie that reward to them accomplishing something related to the sport, because make no mistake, if you don't handle the main thing first, none of
Right.
these other things matter, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So what are your goals for this year? And we work with the agent to
Mhm.
accomplish, right? Is it getting into the starting lineup? Is it to, make so many sacks or score so many points or whatever? You hit that goal and stay locked in for 6
Mhm.
months, right? And we do account for your family to be, some of those things, right?
Mhm.
Then you're able to splurge a little bit, right? What it does is two things. Number one, it does allow you to still spend money, because it's really hard to tell
Mhm.
someone who's come from, this very at-risk, underprivileged background, which the majority of them do, to say, you know
Mhm.
what, you're going to work really hard to get to this point, and I'm going to tell you not to spend any money. Like, just save, just
Right.
human nature, right? So
Yeah.
I'm going to let you get that out. Okay. I'm
Mhm.
going to let you get it out in a way where you can splurge and do some things that you may not otherwise would need to do.
Mhm.
But in order to do it, you've got to earn it. Right. And I think that's the difference between just frivolously spending
Mhm.
impulsively because you want. No, we're going to tie this reward to something that keeps you focused, but then it still allows you to get that impulse out,
Mhm.
and do some things that you want to do.
Mhm. Got you. When you talk about the reward system, for me as a former educator, um, I'm like, okay, so to me, I see a gap in parenting and I see a gap in the educational system because
Yeah.
as parents, at least as me as a parent, I use the reward system all the time. So you
Yeah.
didn't just get something just because you existed, you got it
Mhm.
because you did something you were supposed to do. So, teaching that actions have consequences.
Yeah.
And basically, in the educational system, too, that is one of the things that we do. So I'm like, were they not taught that in the educational system that, you have to do an action. And then once you have you set a goal, and once you've achieved the goal, then you can reward yourself for achieving that goal. So it's interesting that you say that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you bring up two really good points
Mhm.
between, with the parents and the education system. And I'll start with the education system.
Mhm.
Being what I consider myself to be as a non-traditional educator, I
Mhm.
absolutely, teach at the University of Memphis, my juniors and seniors, professional development and readiness, which is
Mhm.
really the core of what I do. Readiness is not checking boxes. Readiness
Right.
is an assessment of the individual, and they've
Mhm.
got to feel ready. Confidence,
Mhm.
they've got to have the right knowledge, and they've got to have certain skills to go out there and be successful, right?
Correct.
And so as I'm able to work at the collegiate level and even at the high school level through my signature curriculums and programming around this same sort of life skills space,
Mhm.
I also have a financial literacy curriculum for teens that we work with the Boys Club, municipalities, just signed a partnership with the National Police Athletic League. And so
Awesome. Pals.
it's
You've been
really cool
around
because those
forever.
money skills are vital,
Yeah.
right? And I've seen it
Yeah.
up close and personal.
Uh-huh.
But working with the education system, I realized while it's necessary, right, to have a
Mhm.
structured learning pathway for our students, there are so many gaps in assessing its effectiveness and allowing educators to have a certain degree of flexibility
Absolutely.
to be innovative in the way they speak
Mhm.
to the true lived experiences of the kids, right? Like everybody
Mhm.
doesn't fit the standard model. And
Right.
so these supplemental programs are essential, particularly in sports. And I'm in the process of starting like this high school student athlete development piece, because
Mhm.
athletics is a key way that many members of certain communities, like our own, um,
Mhm.
that they can make it out and get opportunities that they couldn't traditionally afford to get. So definitely gaps in the education system in preparing these players for this experience.
Mm-hmm.
On the parental side, you're absolutely right. The player doesn't just go pro, right? The parents come along as well. And if
Right.
they are not a part of the educational process, if they are not armed with the tools that they need to support this athlete, right? And really understand and be able to separate. This isn't just son or daughter anymore, right? Like this is a public figure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm supportive, but I definitely need to be protective. And in order to do that, there's some things I need to do, some information I need to arm myself with. And until we can involve them in this process so that they're learning and dealing with some of the same things the athletes are, we're going to continue to see these gaps. But they are the most influential folks in a player's life. And we have got
Mm-hmm.
to figure out a way to include them in this process. So you're
Until he or
absolutely
she gets a girlfriend or boyfriend.
right. So what?
I said
Say it again.
until he or she gets a boyfriend or girlfriend.
You know, well, probably even more so then until they get a husband or wife. Okay.
That
Because
too.
very high targets, right?
Yep.
Like it's like, you
Yep.
know what? And you know, there are women, right? And I remember when Deion Sanders was at Jackson State
Mhm.
and, you know, he brought a young lady in to talk to his players about this. There are women who literally will, you know, scout these young men and really prey on them
Mhm.
as a meal ticket, you know. And so
Yeah.
even that, you know, you've got to make sure that you have these protective barriers around these players while also giving them room to grow and thrive. Because if everybody around them is making decisions for them, and I talk about this a lot, we are trained and conditioned to be coached, to be
Mhm.
told what to do from
Mhm.
little league on up. And then suddenly we get on the other side with all this money and this fame and this attention. And we're said, okay, you know, we're told, go for it. You got it. Figure it out. That's a muscle as well. Like that's a skill, critical thinking and being in a position to make independent decisions. And so mom and dad, coaches, teachers, whomever, if we never allow these young people in this environment where we can protect them and kind of
Mhm.
maybe, you know, fix some flubs, they never learn how to make proper decisions, not just with money, but with the type of people that they choose to bring into their lives.
Right. Um, One part of what you said in your cause tale stood out to me because it sounded like PR, like you
Yeah.
do some type of reputation management for these athletes. Um, in that component, because they do have a reputation to uphold, and they tend to flubber that a lot, right? Just by their actions, if they don't have the right guidance, is one of the things that you encourage them to do is to give back to the community that they came from.
Absolutely, absolutely. We
Mhm.
have tiers to that. I absolutely believe in proactive reputation management, not the
Mhm.
crisis management that a lot of PR and communications
Yeah.
firms engage in when it
Mhm.
comes to this elite level of athletes, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes it's like, okay, when something happens, we'll kind of go into overdrive and try to spin it or get them to retract the story, whatever, right? Why don't you hit the ground running, right? And you don't have to wait until you become pro to do this, right? Why don't you hit the ground running,
Yeah.
telling people what you want them to know and think about you, right? Do a Google search on
Mhm.
yourself. And everything that comes up is something that somebody else wrote, their opinion or how
Mhm.
they framed it, or maybe it's just, you know, only about you as an athlete and not as a person, right? And we know when you're building a brand, those type of authentic connections require a deeper understanding of who you are. Like people
Right.
connect to those they like and trust. And so if they don't know anything about you as a person, how will they connect it and how can you take that connection and turn it into influence, right? And so, one of the easiest ways to do that is through community engagement,
Mhm.
community collaborations with nonprofits or
Mhm.
causes or things important to you or things that you have encountered in your own family that you have more of a personal stake in that shows you as a front runner, lending a voice, using your platform in a positive way
Mhm.
to establish, you know, who you are, but also to use it for good. And so, you know, some of the early ways that I really crossed over from just being a financial advisor was community engagement, summer camps, summer events, backpack giveaways,
Right.
you know, spokesperson for certain events, working with the
Mhm.
boys clubs and the local partnerships. And we do start local. That's your give back. I
Mhm.
typically suggest you don't charge people in your hometown, for things. If you're going to do your
Yeah,
freebies, that's where you do them, at home.
exactly.
Your regional influence, maybe where you went to college, and now we got kids kind of going all over the place with the transfer portal. And so you may
Mhm.
have roots in different communities. You can go back there because that's where you've gained some prominence. And those are areas that you can engage in the community. And then, of course, alongside your professional team, you have opportunities there and representing yourself to do some things for others. And that service is an important component of letting people know things about your character, right?
Mhm.
And that's most important.
What are some of the barriers to, I want to say, comfortability or success that you find a lot of the players who go abroad to play encounter?
Oh, wow. So the upside is amazing, right? Because I don't care
Mhm.
what level of sports you're playing abroad, the fan base is insane.
Really? I've
As
heard that.
Americans, yeah, sometimes we can be a little fair weather, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
if you're hot, we're with you. If you're not, okay. It's not
Yeah.
like that. Like, I feel like a superstar. Like, you're walking around, the games are packed. The
Mhm.
fans are always on 1,000 from the tip to the end of the game. Like, it's crazy. And so being paid to do something you love and experience something that you probably never would have, like, some people would probably never leave their neighborhoods or their states, right? Let alone go to another country on somebody else's dime.
Mhm.
Amazing. But you do have challenges related to assimilating in another culture, right?
Mhm.
Challenges related to culture shock, to time difference, right? I've got a client in China now. And so
Mhm.
when we speak, it's usually a 12 to 13-hour difference. So our nights are their
Their
mornings and
days.
vice versa. So, you got to adapt to that when you want to talk to your family. Food, right? I had a player
Mhm.
once tell me, like, I just eat KFC and McDonald's every single day. Like, I
Oh,
just can't get
wow.
with the food. It's like, oh my gosh. And it does take a toll on you mentally.
Mentally.
Um, in many ways, you feel like you lose time, right? So you leave and then you
Mhm.
come back 10 months later and people are older. Some people have passed on. You've missed all these very important milestones, and it
Mhm.
can really weigh on you, uh, particularly when all you've ever done is played and you haven't set yourself up for what else you're going to do outside of the game, right?
Mhm.
I've been in that position, so I understand the gaps because I've been abroad and it can be difficult, although there are bright spots. And I have worked alongside so many dozens and dozens of athletes and
Mhm.
helped them through those transitions where they can maximize their time. Go back to school, build your business, while you're away. So when you come home, you can really get into it. But it's still hard. So
Mhm.
one of my clients and I decided to create solutions, right? And I don't really consider myself creative, but I am a creator, right?
All right.
Um, and so we filmed this international sport documentary entitled Ballin' Abroad, which should
Mhm.
be coming out here really soon, where we chronicled the lives of 5 champion athletes, Americans who find themselves abroad, and just behind the scenes, their lifestyle, the challenges, the triumphs. And it was such an amazing experience. It was even therapeutic in many ways for those players when we traveled to China to film right before COVID,
Mhm.
which was insane because, like, we came back and the next week, like, they were shutting down the borders. It was crazy. But we were able to really put that story out and to magnify those voices. And then the Athletes Abroad Summit that we launched last summer, to address many of these gaps so we can improve those outcomes, right, of
Mhm.
players who are prepared to transition, but then those who learn how to maximize this platform they have that is suddenly global and international, right? There's so many amazing things you can do to tap into those foreign communities, and we're teaching athletes how to do that through our network. So there are challenges, but there are also solutions on how you can maximize that time, while you're there.
Okay. Um, you mentioned it sporadically throughout the conversation, but I'm curious about the mental health aspect of
Mm.
most of these athletes. Like you said, most of them are coming from underserved communities. They're thrown into a lifestyle that they only imagined, right? While they were growing up, that they could achieve. They have tons of money at this point in time. They have girls, boys, whoever, just knocking down their door trying to get a piece of them. They're thrown into the spotlight. They may have good parents. They may have um, parents who are just pariahs, right? They're
Yeah.
just there for the money,
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
really serve them. Family members are coming out of the woodwork. Tell me about that and how you guys are able to help, because I know that has to be taxing mentally. And then it becomes an emotional and physical issue. How are you negating those issues with your clients?
Yeah, well, I would say three things. One, you normalize that experience, right? Because when you are in it, particularly when you're dealing with family members and just going through this experience. Remember, I talked about how noisy it is, busy, right? You have so much going
Yes.
on. That in itself is stressful, right?
Hmm.
People think stress is just bad stuff happening. No, stress can be overwhelming, when you have a lot of good things happening as well. And so the
Right.
first thing you do is normalize the experience, right?
Hmm.
To let them know you're not alone. You're not the only player dealing with this, and trying to surround them with other players who've encountered this. I'm a huge proponent of mentorship, right? And so making those connections, encouraging them to find other players to share the experience with, lets them know that there's nothing wrong with you, right? And what
Hmm.
you're going through, right? Um, the second thing we do is to empower them, right? And I talk a lot about readiness, and a big component of that is confidence, right? Like if you don't feel, I don't care what you know, what you have, if you don't
Hmm.
feel confident in utilizing those things, it's not going to work, right? And
Hmm.
so we really speak into their ability as adults now, because these are young adults, to
Hmm.
say no, to choose what type of life and what that they want to lead and how they want things to go,
Hmm.
reminding them that it can be incredibly lonely and isolating, right? And you hear that sometimes. There are graphics that go
It's
around of
lonely at the
like
top.
success. Yeah, somebody at the top, but they're by themselves, right?
Yeah.
And that's so true, because you can't shift everyone else's mindset. Oftentimes they still see you the way you were before, right? As a child, or as, the dependent in many ways. And so now as provider, they lean on you, oftentimes unfairly, right? And I've
Mhm.
had players like that. They have their own families and all this, but then you have the entire family, not even just immediate family,
I
with
know.
this expectation that suddenly every one of our interactions are about money. And so one thing I do in my rookie year system, do
Mhm.
not give money for anything, right? Like if you're gonna
Hmm.
fly people out, fly them out or whatever.
Mhm.
Don't give money for birthdays. Don't give money for holidays. Don't give money,
Mhm.
be very careful about starting that.
Setting expectations.
You set that expectation, right? Because they're not just going to expect you to do the same thing.
Yeah.
All right, you've been playing for 5 or 6 years, so I know I saw what your contract was, right? So you ought to be
Mhm.
able to do this, and people get to count in your pockets, and then there's
Mhm.
this guilt that comes over you because you love these people dearly. You don't
Right.
want to disappoint them, you don't want to let them down. But you also realize that it's not healthy and you can't continue to do that. So in normalizing that and surrounding them with people who've encountered that and how they've dealt with it, it gives them a lot of strength and courage to do what they need to do. And so that's really how we try to speak, so that they can carry these skills and relationships with them for the rest of their lives. I tell folks
Right.
when I meet with them, I don't want to work with you forever. I don't want you
Mhm.
so dependent on me that you can't, do what you need to
Yeah.
do, because that's unhealthy as well. And there have been some cases where I've had to sort of disengage a bit because I can feel that codependency on me to
Mhm.
think for them. And I need them to have the skills to be successful beyond,
And think for
our
themselves, yeah. When I tell people that, like, I don't want any of my clients with me, you should only have to work with me for a year. If
yeah,
you're working with me 3, 4, 5, something is wrong. I'm doing something wrong
or we're
because
not
that's not the
focusing enough on
goal.
the yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
unless I'm your accountant,
Yes.
I don't see why
For
you need
sure.
me forever.
Right.
I'm supposed
Right.
to be doing the work, teaching you the skills so that you can go out there and flap your own wings, not
Absolutely.
depend on me. Yeah, so I love that. I've always wondered about that aspect, the mental health and emotional aspect that a lot of these athletes have to deal with when it comes to, first of all, their family members,
Family, I
right? Because
sympathize with them. It's
yeah,
hard. It's really,
you
really
can't
hard.
choose
And
them. They come with you,
they come with
so
it's a package
how do
deal.
you set boundaries so that they understand that I am not an ATM machine. I'm not a cash
Yeah.
cow. You're not going to quit your job and now put your feet up on the couch and be good,
Yeah.
right?
It
So,
it's definitely establishing when I talk about processes, that's one of them. This
mhm,
is how it is. Oftentimes I'm the bad guy. And that's okay. It's like, listen, it's hard to say no. It really
right.
is to your loved ones,
Mhm,
especially mama. But, oftentimes it's like, look, I can't do it. My advisor, my business manager said that I can't do it right now, So then you have all these other questions, but it's okay. It's okay. It's a part of it. If I can kind of cover them until they get stronger and the courage, because I understand, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah. And it's good that they have a barrier between themselves and that family member. So they're not just saying, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. I have a business manager. So my business manager says I can't do it. So they have someone else to put the blame on, which takes some of the pressure off of themselves. Yeah. And if mama has a problem, mama has to come see you.
And mama has come to see me, right? And I had to grow in this space as well, because my intentions are always for us, people understand. Sometimes people don't want to understand. They just want what they want, right? They don't care about any of that other stuff. And I had to grow, stronger and get thicker skin in that space as well, understanding, because again, it takes time for them to grow there. Maybe initially is I can't do it because it doesn't make sense. Really, I don't want to do it. And that's just, kind of what comes with that, and some of the blowback and the family members not talking. And I mean, I've seen a lot of that. And I just really sympathize with the players, because if you've not been in those shoes, you don't understand that pressure from having everyone pulling on you, family members, friends, you're a target to people of the opposite sex. You've got community members, you got folks who have these great ideas and they want you to invest in it. You have so many people pulling on you. So now when new people come along in whatever capacity, you're looking at them sideways. Can I trust you?
Right.
Like, what do you want? Who sent you? Right. And it's just hard to live your life on edge with a bit of paranoia in a way about new relationships. So again, you're isolating. Right.
And I think one of the things that makes your job in their life so important is that as an athlete, one injury can take you out the game. Right. So yes, they go into the game. And that's why I love the part where you talked about the financial aspect, the financial planning aspect of it from the very beginning, taking a percentage, putting aside, because sometimes you can only get one term in the game. Because you have this big contract doesn't mean that you're going to be able to carry it out and get the $30 million or whatever it is. You could be out of the game in the first season or the first year or the first 2 years. So if you didn't spend your coins correctly from the very beginning, that can lead you to not having any money at the end.
Yes. It's a lot. And again, sometimes you have to protect them from themselves. When it comes there. Like, seriously. And I say that to them. Like, I know your nature. I know you got a lot of folks pulling on you. But those processes, that discipline, that is key, right? And that's something they can take with them far beyond me. And oftentimes the parents come around too, when we were talking about that just a moment ago. This opportunity can be life-changing, not just for the athlete, but for their families, but in their communities, right? I signed my first Major League Baseball player last year. And Black kid, right? And that's not a sport where you see the majority African-American players. What he's been able to do, and I think he's starting to realize this, just by his mere existence, is just kind of a generational gem and for young players aspiring to get into this space. And so, he was just recognized as the first African-American player to be drafted into the major leagues from his hometown, and just some other things. He got a couple of league awards from the major leagues, and it's just amazing to be on this side of things and to walk alongside these young people who are doing amazing work and really using their talents in a way that will transcend generations. And I'm just grateful that I'm able to go alongside them on this journey. But it's so fulfilling in so many ways. And again, what I do, there's not necessarily an educational pathway, right? You know what an agent does and all that, but you don't think about this other person to help you manage all that comes with this experience.
Comes with it,
Right?
yeah.
Like even having your CPA, which, I make sure the tax documents are how they are. I have experience preparing taxes because when I became a
Okay, you
financial
just an
advisor,
all round.
yes, I was like,
The
okay,
whole
I'm giving you
package.
advice, but I got to put this disclaimer, like this is not tax advice. You need to consult but I need to know that if I'm making
Right.
recommendations to you. So I went through a process and I did taxes for about 10 years and I still do it here and there. But your CPAs, your attorneys, your team, your managers, like who is helping you manage those? Because you're busy. And so this idea of the athlete CEO sounds great, but I want you to think how a real CEO operates a corporation. Okay. They got,
They're the
professional
top part of the
executive leaders.
umbrella,
You
and
got
then
your
they have
leaders. Yeah.
Mhm,
You got folks in place to help you. You don't know everything going on the
mhm,
ground, right?
mhm.
But you are looking at ROI and you asking questions of certain people. And so I try to
Absolutely.
fill their role for them. And I just thank God for the journey.
All right. This
Yeah.
has been a very enlightening conversation. I love it. I've learned a lot. I had a lot of my own questions answered. So hopefully the audience has learned a lot too and has more clarity as to what happens behind the scenes with a lot of these athletes that go, whether it's through college or major leagues, that they understand a little bit more of the dynamics mentally, physically, and emotionally that's happening with them. So if you had to leave the audience with 3 tips, either athletes coming out of high school, current athletes in college, and the parents, what would be those 3 tips?
Mm. Always know yourself. Know thyself. There is power there in knowing who you are without just the label of being an athlete, because you are
Mhm.
more than that, right? So that self discovery, self awareness is important. Second thing I would say is know your purpose, right? As a God fearing woman, I believe that we all have gifts and talents and these special things that we do. What you do well and understand well, or you're an expert in, may not be the thing that I am, but I got my own thing that I know full well, and I can walk boldly in that because I know all I have to do is be me. So know your purpose. What are your gifts, and lean into those things because they'll make room for you. And then the last thing I'll say is know your team. No one, right? Know your tribe, right? No one has accomplished anything great on their own, right? You need people. You need to connect with like-minded people, mentors, and others who support you without requiring anything in return.
Mhm.
And once you get those folks and you identify who they are, keep them close
Mhm.
because you will need them along the way.
Yeah. I love that last one more than anything else because I say that all the time.
Yeah,
Greatness takes a team.
it does.
Okay. It takes a team. You have to have people that you can rely on. If you're going through a major project, stop trying to do it yourself. Get other people involved, people you
Yeah.
trust. You have to
Mhm.
network in order to figure out who you can trust to bring along with you for the ride. So the last question is, what makes you an impactor?
I am an impactor because I can boldly create the solution to fill the gaps for some of the more vulnerable individuals in the sports industry. And that's the gift the Lord gave me.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Tawana Smith,
Thank
for being here
you.
today. I really appreciate it. This has been an excellent conversation, and I know that our audience will get a lot out of
Yes.
it.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me.
You're welcome.